Welcome back, everybody. This is Andrew DFS, analyst with FFMetrics and co-host of the Huddle Up podcast, where we drop episodes every Wednesday and Thursday. FFMetrics is a site run by the brilliant R.C. Fisher. He's an independent scout, provides incredible breakdowns of games, fantasy football projections, and handicapping advice. So check out that site. I'm a contributor and analyst there as well. So for those of you that have been listeners, welcome back. We're going to dive into the Week 9 winner of the Millie Maker competition and talk through some Week 10 lineup strategies. But before doing so, if this is your first time watching and you like the content, please subscribe to the channel. Really appreciate it. Let's dive in. So Week 9 was a pretty crazy week, and the winner of the Millie Maker competition on DraftKings was a user by the name of UDACAO, UDACAO, or whatever. So the main thing here was, did you play the Texans game in your stack or not? Okay, here's what's going on. Stroud went crazy in this game. 470 passing yards, breaks a rookie record, 5 passing touchdowns. We've loved Stroud this entire season, but nobody could have seen this great of a performance coming. So shout out to Cow or whatever, $1 million. Hope you can do something crazy with that money. Hope you get to enjoy it. So a Stroud stack with Tank Dell and Noah Brown. Noah Brown was somebody that we discussed both of these receivers on the show last time, right? Where Noah Brown was getting 70% of the snap counts when in Robert Woods' absence, and we also like Tank Dell as well, just given the Tampa Bay defense. Schultz was another person we like getting snap counts as well, getting targets. But again, to win the Millie Maker here, you sort of have to lean onto one stack, and that's exactly what this user did. The bring back piece in this was Rachaad White, who is one of the guys we've been honing in on all season. He's great. He's fantastic. But now a lot of people are going to be all over him because he's had like 2 straight quality starts. Okay, so what else happened in this lineup? So we had Stroud with 3 of his pass catchers, Dell, Brown, Schultz. Bring back piece, Rachaad White. That's 5 players. The remaining 4, this lineup survived a dud from Bijan Robinson. Bijan Robinson only threw up, not even 7 points, and a lot of people are waiting for the guy to pop off. They're chasing him because he has a low salary, but Arthur Smith is very stubborn and doesn't want to give him carries, and honestly, him fumbling didn't help his situation out at all. CeeDee Lamb was the next piece that wasn't involved in that crazy Texans Tampa Bay stack. CD went crazy again, and he's been going crazy for the past couple weeks. I think he's had 3 to 4 straight games of 100 yards receiving, which is incredible. He was chalky, as you guys can tell. 34.9% of the field played him in the Millie Maker competition, and he threw up 32 points. That's awesome. Then lastly, we had Josh Jacobs with 22 points, and you can't see it on the bottom of the screen, but we also have the Cleveland Browns D that threw up 20 points. So those are the 2 remaining plays. The Cleveland Browns D was incredible in that game against Arizona. They just shut down the rookie quarterback. Again, when you have an offensive line going against the great defensive line, that's usually the recipe for a really successful defensive play. And we want to also, take advantage of those, but realize that sometimes expensive plays make sense in that spot, in that situation, and then other times you got to be a little more careful. So we'll dive into that as well. But before we do that, let's review the chalky plays from last week. So we have Alvin Kamara at number 1, who only threw up 11 points. Almost 40% of the Millie Maker pool played Kamara, which didn't end up hitting. CeeDee Lamb was the second chalkiest player at 34.9%, as you see there. He ended up, contributing. He held his own. He did good. Sometimes you can't fade the chalk. And with CD, past couple of weeks, that's been the case. Jonathan Taylor was another chalky play. We talked about him on the show going up against his former head coach. He had a pretty decent day, but he didn't really explode, and you can see he wasn't really in the winning lineup here. Giants D was next on the list, and they had -1 points. That's tough. I mean, people played them because they had a very cheap salary. They were the lowest defense, but for good reason. They're not all that great. They kind of they lost Leonard Williams too in that process, and the Raiders were very motivated to win that game. Last one that we wanted to talk about, Demario Douglas, who we talked about on this show. He was chalky as well. Similar to Noah Brown, he was cheap and had a lot of usage, but as we discussed, Douglas was the one that had the Roto World blurb, so everyone was all over him. Noah Brown was kind of under the radar. There's a similar situation like that this week, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. But before we do that, let us dive in to the full slate for Week 10. Okay. We got 10 games again. We have KC, Miami, I believe Los Angeles, and can't remember the other team on bye off the top of my head, but you're already missing out on, and Philly. So with KC, Miami, and Philly, you're losing out on Hurts, Mahomes, Tyreek, Tua, lots of players getting out of that rotation, and also no Cup. 10 games. And in these 10 games, no totals that are really anything to go crazy over, right? Nothing over 50. But let's go line by line. Browns, Ravens. I expect that to be a defensive battle. Baltimore's defense has been out of this world this season, especially at home. Browns' defense is no joke either. But now they're on the road. They're going up against the top line in Baltimore. That's tough. It's really hard to envision anybody from this game being a good DFS play. I got one suggestion, and we'll dive into that later. Texans, Bengals. Over-under here climbed up to 47 because CJ Stroud exploded. Let me give you guys a warning on this. The Bengals have one of the toughest stadiums and crowds that you'll see in the NFL. It's a big home field advantage. You have a rookie walking in there. All I'm saying is just be really careful if you're going to start Texans players. Don't expect Stroud to go for 470 against this team, this defense. They're the real deal. 49ers, Jaguars. Both teams coming off a bye. 49ers on a 3-game losing streak. They get Debo back. They get Trent Williams back. Not everybody here knows I'm not the biggest Trevor guy in the world. This has the makings for me for a 49ers get-right game. 45 is the over-under. The 49ers had a similar slump last year. They got crushed by Atlanta. They got creamed by Cincy back-to-back games, and they just came out and started clicking. They usually have this little fall slump. They have a little bit of injuries. Now, everybody should be back and healthy. I know Debo's back. I think Trent Williams is practicing. Also, this marks CMC's record-tying game. If CMC scores here, he will hold the record for most consecutive touchdowns in regular season games with 18. Saints Vikings, over-under, 40. Nasty. You have Dobbs starting for the Vikings going up against a good D. Vikings D is also emerging, so it's not like Derek Carr and them boys you're ready to fire them up here. This is a tough spot, tough match. That's reflective of the over-under there. Yeah, it's really hard for me to get excited about anybody in that game. Packers Steelers, another nasty one. 39's the over-under. You have two teams that, Pittsburgh is at home. They have the better defense. Packers have a okay defense. They're not terrible, but both quarterbacks are horrendous, so both defenses are going to be good plays. Packers have better offensive weapons, I would say, in aggregate, but This is a tough one. That's a really tough game to predict. Titans, Buccaneers. Buccaneers coming off a game where they gave up 39 points, but it's not like they got embarrassed or anything. They threw up 37 points of their own. Their defense definitely got embarrassed, but this is a secondary that's been giving up a lot of fantasy points to receivers, even before CJ Stroud's explosion. So is Will Levis and DeAndre Hopkins to play here? We'll find out. Atlanta Falcons traveling to the desert to take on the Cardinals in what could be Kyler Murray's comeback game. Falcons are on a little losing streak of their own. They lost 2 in a row. There are questions around Bijan Robinson. We're hearing rumblings of Arthur Smith's job in jeopardy. Is this going to be a dead cat bounce for the Falcons and Arthur Smith? Or are they going to come out and just, roll over to Kyler Murray? We'll see. Lions going to the West Coast to take on the Chargers in what has the highest over-under at 48.5 on the slate. You got Herbert, you got Goff, David Montgomery is going to make his return. Lots of fantasy players here. Giants, Cowboys. Wow, minus 17. Cowboys are favored by 2 touchdowns and a field goal. That is a really, really big spread. 39 is the over-under there. This is tough, and I wanna speak to the viewers about this game because I think there's a chalky side to this, and then there's a side that we need to discuss a little further. And then lastly, we have the Commanders and Sam Howell going into Seattle. Commanders, 2 back-to-back games where they look good, right? They they played Philly. They kept that game close. They beat the Patriots last week. But now they're traveling to the West Coast. Seattle coming off an embarrassing loss. This is a spot where Commanders probably get smacked. And the over-under there is 44.5. And we'll dive into that game a little bit more as we start talking about lineup strategies. Okay, now time to go into the DraftKings site. So we're already on the Millie Maker competition here. And for those of you that are new to DraftKings, this is DraftKings weekly contest that they run on their main slate. Basically, it's $20 to enter. Top prize is $1 million. And basically, you would need, at least like 225 points to even be in contention for that number 1 spot. You usually don't see anything less than that. Take it. You can get as high as, I've seen 300 on this before. Take it all. So this is the main competition that gets run. I really hope a viewer of this podcast wins this one day. That would be freaking amazing. If I can contribute just a little bit, one little tweak to your lineup, that would make me very happy and feel like I did my job in giving you guys good content. All right, let's dive in and talk about the QB stacks. That always goes first, right? That's the most important thing. We want to find that next 40-point QB, but also keep in mind that 40-point QBs are not common, okay? We've only had 2 this season. I think Tua did it one time, and CJ Stroud did it the other. Okay. First person on the list, Lamar Jackson. I would fade this one. Cleveland is a good D. I just don't see Lamar going crazy. He's the most expensive QB on the slate. I wouldn't do it, so pass on him. Justin Herbert is going to be my expensive play for the week. So he's going up against Detroit. I think this is going to be a high-scoring game. I would recommend starting him, and then obviously stack options for him. You don't have to look any further than Keenan Allen, who is not going to be a chalky play this week. He's going up against a Detroit defense that 2 weeks ago was letting Devontae Adams get lost in coverage, but obviously Devontae Adams doesn't have a Justin Herbert to throw him the ball. So I think this can be a week where Keenan Allen bounces back. He's kind of due for a bounce back spot here. Okay. CJ Stroud, we talked about it at the top. We're nervous about him this week, folks. We're nervous. He's going into Cincinnati. That is not where you want a rookie quarterback who's coming off the game of his life to go into. That it's just a I could see this being like a 200-yard, 2 interception type of game for Stroud. And Nico Collins is out too, so his top receiver is going to be out. Even though that top receiver didn't go crazy last week, it's just going to draw coverage on Noah Brown, on Tank Dell. Not saying they can't beat it, but it's going to be tough. Okay. Burrow would be my next play. So I'm all for a Burrow Chase stack. You got to monitor Chase because you don't know if he's going to play or not. So just be careful. Higgins has been ruled out. And yeah, so if you're going to do Burrow, make sure you're watching out for Chase. I can't believe Joe Burrow is cheaper than Houston's CJ Stroud. Like, what? That is nuts to me, man. I love CJ Stroud, but it's one game. Like, Burrow's been playing at an elite level for a long time. Like, that pricing does not make sense to me. Even though it's $100, it's like disrespectful to my guy, man. Can't do Joe Burrow like that. Play Chase, right? But you got to monitor him. And I'm going to give you guys an alternative. Higgins is out, right? So everybody and their mother wants to play Boyd. And he's going to get reps. He's going to get targets. I'm not saying he won't. But there's another guy I love in this situation. This is kind of like the Noah Brown play. So Noah Brown last week, we were talking about how like he gets a bunch of snaps, targets, whatever in Woods' absence. When Higgins doesn't play, there's another receiver on Cincinnati that nobody seems to remember that gets a bunch of targets. And albeit it only happened once this season, but that receiver is none other than Mr. Trenton Irwin at a measly $3,000. This guy ran 70% of the snaps when Higgins was out in week 5 and drew 10 targets. Now, we have Higgins out. Everyone and their mother going Boyd. Chase isn't, that back could act up, flare up during the game. Irwin's in a spot here to, at 3,000, you don't need much. You get 12 points out of this guy, and like it is a crazy return. Like that could easily happen in this game. So I love Irwin here. And if you want to play it as him as like play him if you want by himself or in this stack. Like he's definitely going to be in my lineup. So this is the cheap guy that I love this week. Last week we talked about Brown and Douglas. I don't hate Boyd. I'm just trying to offset the pool. Everyone's going Boyd. I think 50% of the pool is going to go Boyd. So if Irwin takes away touches, you're going to be in a good spot. So, all right. I get excited when I talk about Cincinnati, guys. Cincinnati's like, I'm not even a Cincinnati fan. I'm just a big Joe Burrow guy. I like good teams. I like good players. I don't like imposters. Imposters piss me off. And speaking of imposters, let's give one a shout out when we go down this list. So let's scroll back up where we were in the $6,000 range. I wouldn't play Trevor. Trevor's the imposter that I wanted to give a shout out to. Everybody thinks he's this top 10 QB. He's not. CJ Stroud in 9 games has looked more impressive than Trevor ever has in his career. So yeah, would definitely not start him against San Francisco. So shout out to imposter Trevor. Anyways, Prescott and Goff. I'm less excited about Prescott because I think it's going to be more of a Pollard show this week. He's just due to, take a step back. He's had, I think, 2 straight games of 300 yards, 3 passing touchdowns. This feels like a Pollard game to me. Giants don't have Leonard Williams. Josh Jacobs went crazy, so I would be careful with that. Jared Goff could do well too. I'm not recommending him in a stack only because David Montgomery's coming back, and that typically hinders Goff because in the red zone they love to run the ball, and that can really hurt Goff's production. But I don't hate it as a play, especially like you can play like Amon-Ra, you can play Sam Laporta. That's fine, they're gonna get theirs, but Goff really needs to get those passing touchdowns. Amon-Ra and Laporta could have big days without getting a touchdown because they get double-digit targets. Okay, now we're in the $5,000 range. So if Kyler's a go, he's definitely somebody you want to consider. He's not going to be he's not the guy that I would like put number 1 in this salary range, but he's someone that I'm considering in my lineups just because this is his first game back. This is when you want to play him. Not a lot of people are on him, and this is the type of spot, when a QB makes their first start where you can gain a big leverage play over the pool. So that's one to consider, especially if you're submitting more than one lineup. Sam Howell pass. I don't want any part of him going up against Seattle D. Derek Carr, same thing. I don't trust him in Minnesota. Geno Smith, I could see that turning out well. I could see a good Geno Smith bounce back game. I'd recommend him too. I'm bullish on him. He's not going to be a guy that I'm going to click on though. The guys that I click on, even though I didn't click on Herbert, Herbert's also up there in my stack rankings. The guys I click on are the guys that I like, so that I actually build a lineup with. So Purdy's another one here. So let's click on him so you guys see that I like him. So Purdy, and you can go Ayuk. So that's a good stack. You can also do Debo if you want, but it's his first game coming back, so just be a little careful about that. And George Kittle, when Ayuk and Debo both play, he rarely ever gets the ball. So Purdy's been in a slump. I think this is a game where Kyle Shanahan, first of all, is going to get CMC his touchdown. Let's break that record, right? But then now let's get Purdy right. Let's get him back. Let's give him his swag back, and I think this can be a really good spot where Purdy has a good day. So for the people submitting more than one lineup, this is definitely one that I like a lot too. Okay. In this range, who else do we want to talk about? Let's scroll down. We talked about Purdy, talked about Smith, Jordan Love pass, Josh Dobbs pass, Deshaun Watson pass, Will Levis, my guy. This is another rookie quarterback that I really like. Going up against the Tampa defense, probably is going to be missing their corner Jamal Dean. The only thing that I don't like about this is that these players become a little more chalky. So Will Levis isn't chalky, but Hopkins is. And if you want to go tight end with Chigakonkwo right here at 3,000, I think that's a good play too if you're going to lean into the tight end stack. So this is a pretty cheap stack that has a lot of upside. And then on the bring back piece, I love Rachaad White. I will always push for Rachaad White when it makes sense. And this is kind of similar to the lineup that was played last week that won. So that's the only thing that kind of gives me pause that I'm sort of copying the strategy. Attack Tampa by playing the QB, the top receiver, tight end, and then the bring back running back piece in Rachaad White. But I think this has a lot of upside this week too. Rachaad White and Hopkins are both going to be chalky, so heads up there. You offset the chalk with a Levis and Okonkwo play though. So that one I like a lot. And the last one I'm going to do here, the last one, is going to be one that I recommended last week. And I just think that after Atlanta losing 2 weeks in a row, Taylor Heineke one more week getting starter reps, going up against an Arizona D that, really lets QBs go crazy. I think this is a good start. And you're going to have Kyler Murray on the other side that putting pressure to make this a high scoring game. Heineke with Drake London. So let's scroll down here. And he's slated to start here too. They have trouble covering number one receivers. And you can play Moore as a bring back piece here, instead of going the more chalky play in Hollywood Brown. And you can also play Pitts or McBride, whichever one, as bring back, or Pitts as a stack piece and McBride as a bring back piece. So I like this play a lot too. This is also a cheap stack, and it can allow you to do something crazy okay, Amon-Ra Keenan, boom. That should perform very well. So when you go cheap that way, you can really get some explosion later. So last week, our issue was we were good with our cheap plays, but our explosive pieces didn't hit. So hopefully this week we can get clicking on all cylinders. And when we review the Millie Maker lineup next week, we'll see Andrew DFS number 1. Wouldn't that be something? Okay, I'm kidding. I'd rather have a viewer get it than me. No cap on that. Running backs. Let's dive in. So we were talking about the QB stacks. Let's go into running backs. So if you don't want to play Purdy, if you think this is going to be CMC's day instead, I think that's perfectly fine. He's at 9,200. You're going to need the guy to score 36 points, but he's probably going to do that against this against this Jacksonville team. So just looking at his game logs here, it's hard for him to come up, but this is his record-breaking game. So you could see that, like, honestly, as I'm talking about it, though, he's only breached 30 once, and it was this 51-point game. I think this game, though, has, like, it is more of a McCaffrey, like, 50-point explosion type of game. Like, it's definitely possible. So I wouldn't be afraid of it. I'm not sure if I'll do it. So that's the guy I like in this. If you're going to go anybody here, like in this $8,000 plus range, I would fade Eckler. I would fade Kamara. That I would go CMC. But then in this $7,000 range, I love Pollard this week. And not a lot of people are on him. This is going to be like a ball control type of game. So definitely consider Pollard in your lineups as well. ETN pass. I'm scared of him against San Francisco. Gibbs and Montgomery. This is tough. If I'm going to play one, I'm going to do Montgomery. I know Gibbs has looked really good, but just keep in mind, Dan Campbell loves the Montgomery, Jamal Williams type of running backs. Like, I think Gibbs is a trap here, so I'd be very careful playing him. Kenneth Walker. I mean, this guy's been losing a lot of snaps, a lot of targets to Zach Charbonnet. I don't know if he's injured, or I don't know if Pete Carroll's realizing what he has in Charbonnet, but yeah, not a good situation there. He started off really hot, and now he's cooled off. So I don't know that we're going to get a pop game out of him, but I could see the Washington-Seattle game be more of like a ball control type of game, kind of like Dallas Giants. I could see that happening too. You have an East Coast team traveling west. The West Coast team does have a pretty good defense, and they got embarrassed. So they're all going to be like, okay, let's go. Let's get rolling here. Aaron Jones, 20 carries last week. He's getting usage, guys. He's getting usage. Pittsburgh, not that great against the run. The only thing that makes me nervous here is the game script, because Jordan Love could easily screw this up. He's going on the road in a hostile environment against a good D. That's what gives me pause, but I don't hate that play. Mixon's next. Mixon's chalky, but you have to think in a week where, like, you don't have Higgins and, I mean, I could see this just them going up against a lesser offense in Texans, or a rookie going on the road. I shouldn't call the Texans offense bad. They do have Stroud, but this is just a really bad spot for them. So again, this has like a since he can control the game type of feel, right? Gus Edwards, I don't trust at that salary. He's been getting his touches, and touchdowns. I just don't think I wouldn't rely on it consistently week to week though. Bijan Robinson, $6,000. He's a chalky play. Everyone thinks that like now there's a fire lit under Arthur Smith to get the guy rolling, but I don't trust Arthur Smith with Bijan Robinson. I'm sorry, like that. It's really tough to see a scenario where that works out. James Conner could hit. There's no DeMarcado against the Falcons, so he needs to be activated off IR. I don't know that he's going to play, but monitor him on Sunday. He could be a sneaky play. Rachaad White, people are on him now. People are seeing how good he is. He's a PPR machine. This is a guy that was drafted behind a bunch of running backs in redraft leagues, and now he's starting to come into his own. He's kicking into high gear. He's going to finish the season as a top 10 running back overall in redraft leagues. This guy's legit, especially in PPR. So I love him. I know he's chalky, but given that he's on the cheaper side, I'm okay biting the chalk here. Brian Robinson, pass. Just pass. I'm not gonna play Brian Robinson in a game where the game script could easily flip to Seattle with them having Leonard Williams. No, thank you. That doesn't sound good to me at all. Ford against Baltimore, Hunt, like they're all in a committee. Like I can't trust any of them. Warren and Harris, forget that. I want zero business with the Pittsburgh backfield unless Harris goes down. Then Warren becomes a viable play. But the current state of it, pass. Jordan Mason, Josh Kelly, don't like any of them. Here's a guy I like for Baltimore if you want a cheap play. Keaton Mitchell. He's sort of like a Devon A-Chain light, so he's been exploding. I mean, he had I think he had over 100 yards last week, 138 yards on 9 carries. Like, this guy is really explosive. So definitely consider him in your lineups too. He has the questionable tag. He's expected to play. The offensive coordinator saying that he's going to get more reps. I could see this one hitting. I don't know that I'm going to do it. If he was fully healthy, I might have considered it more, but I could see it hitting. Anyone else that I like? I think Mitchell was my one more. Let's scroll down. I'm going to give you guys another cheap play. Another cheap play. Where are you at, my boy? Where's my guy? There he is. Zach Charbonnet. We've been talking him up on this podcast for a while now. He is like almost in like a 50-50 split with Kenneth Walker. I know it doesn't show up in the receptions and the attempts or whatever, but snap count wise, like, he's on the field. So I could see Charbonnet having a good day in this one. Only $4,200. That would be my two cheap running back plays would be Mitchell and Charbonnet if you want to get crazy with it. Okay, receiver time. Let's get explosive. Okay. So we always tease this out a little bit when we do the QB stacks because it's kind of hard not to talk about receivers when looking at a QB stack. But from the guys 8,000 and up, I like Amon-Ra. I don't like CD because I feel like this is a Pollard game. I want to pass on that. I'm nervous about Chase's back flaring up in the game. And Allen is someone I would go with too. He's due. Allen hasn't really done a lot. So, like, this is what you want. You want a guy getting into a good spot. He's at home. It's going to be high scoring. Like, he hasn't really done much. He's gone 3 games without a touchdown. I think it's time, man. I think it's time for this guy to really step up. So, look at this. Like, he started off 34, 48, boom, and then he's been relatively quiet, like 12, 21, 9, 14, 15. I think we're due for a Keenan Allen game here. Amon-Ra, can't say enough good things about him. He gets a bunch of the targets for Detroit, so as long as he's healthy, you can fire him up and fit plus matchup for him. Let's do the next group of the 7,000. There are 2 $7,000 guys. I like Ayuk, so I'll fire him up. So let's just focus on the $6,000 guys. I like Metcalf, no to Godwin, Nico and Higgins both out. Olave I wouldn't trust in Minnesota. I just don't trust that defense and Mini. They're emerging, and Carr, I just don't know what I'm going to get out of him in that game. Cooper, I wouldn't play against that Baltimore Debo Samuel's risky first game off an injury, but that's usually when you want to play him. Not too crazy about him. Lockett could pop just like Metcalf, but Metcalf is due. I don't think Metcalf has really had like a crazy game yet. So here's another receiver where we really haven't seen him do much. Let's pull up his game log really quick to check him out. But we'll go under the yeah. So he's had 20 points one time this entire season. So he's been a pretty low ROI guy. So this could be it. This could be his spot where he eats. He had 10 targets against Cincy, 14 against Cleveland, and they had no answer against Baltimore. So he's getting his looks, but it's just they've been missing on this. Okay. Let's talk about I like Christian Kirk and Hopkins too. Those are two good plays I would recommend as well. Let's talk about our $5,000 group. Okay. I wouldn't go with Addison. I don't think that McLaurin's gonna go all that crazy too. I'm still afraid of that Seattle secondary. I know it doesn't show up on their opponent rank or whatever, but second half of the season they've been doing pretty good. Zay, I don't trust against Cleveland. Ridley, I wouldn't go with. I'd rather go with Kirk in that one. Tank Dell, hard to trust in Cincy. Drake London, we talked about. I could see him doing well in that game. Deontay Johnson's been getting the targets, but don't trust him. Dobbs, I don't trust. Hollywood Brown is going to be chalky. You got to make sure that if you start him that Kyler's playing. If so, he's probably going to get a lot of targets, so it could end up being a good play. I just don't love that he's chalky in that one. George Pickens, yeah, I would pass on that too. Dotson, I'm not crazy about. Watson, I'm not crazy about. Okay, now we get to the $4,000 group. Boyd is a tough play just because you don't a lot of the pool is going to be on him. So like I'm a contrarian in nature. Like I rather go Irwin over Boyd, but I totally get the logic behind playing Boyd. So we talked about Boyd, Thomas, Shaheed, hard to trust. Shaheed might be this could be a Shaheed game. I could see that. He was quiet last week. He usually he has stretches where he's quiet. So let's kind of like try to get a beat on his pattern. So yeah, he went 20 week one, right? And then he's just quiet 4 straight games, drops 18, quiet, drops 27, quiet. He alternates, but the Saints just don't play the guy enough for me to get excited about him. So pass on that. KJ Osborne, no. Brandon Cooks, I wouldn't trust either. I just don't see that being a crazy passing game. Quentin Johnson, a lot of people are on him, but I know he's getting snap counts and targets, but he's just really not that good. So I rather go Keenan here. I don't think he's gonna get anything significant in that game. JSN, I'm not crazy about JSN either talent wise, but he is getting a lot of targets. He's better than Johnson, I'll tell you that much. Like JSN's playable. So if you want to go him as like a cheap play to offset like a potential Metcalf or Lockett, that's pretty much why Metcalf hasn't been going crazy. It's because Lockett's kind of emerged too, and Metcalf is drawing coverage, and it's opening up JSN, who can, he's fine if he's playing the third corner on a team, and Washington doesn't really have the best corners in the world, as evidenced by this 30th opponent rank. They let receivers go crazy. So, yeah, JSN's a good play. So in the $3,000 range, it gets really dry. So we talked about Irwin. I would avoid I would avoid Noah Brown. I know a lot of people. He's chalky now, so be really careful. People saw him pop off, and now Nico's out or whatever. Woods is coming back, so just yeah, in that game, it just doesn't. I can't see Brown going crazy 2 weeks in a row. It's kind of a big ask for him. Wandale's an interesting one in this. So, he's cheap. They're gonna be down a lot, and he does get targets. So, yeah, he got 5 last week against the Raiders. Caught a touchdown, 13.5 points. The Jets game just tossed that out because that was like in the rain or whatever, bad weather. But then, you can see, okay, yeah, he had a messed up game against Washington, but he did decent against Buffalo, 6-6, 6-5. So basically, if you toss out these two games, the guy's been like getting 5 targets per game. It's not the worst play in the world, especially like Dallas is going to be keyed in on stopping Barkley, so Wandale is going to, open up. I like the play. I don't think it's crazy at all. Um, but again, the guy that I like a lot in this range is Irwin. We talked about him already. Two more guys I want to talk about though is number one is Kadero Hodge. Him and Heineke seem to have some sort of connection, but he can. I think he'll drop off with London coming back. So be careful about Hodge. But I just want to call out that there is chemistry between Heineke and him. The next guy I want to talk about, Darius Davis. He's not getting the snaps, guys, but he's explosive. He's really good, and I think the if the Chargers coaching staff wanted to like really like throw something different at the Lions, I would want to see this guy get more snaps over at least Quentin Johnson. This guy's explosive. He can do big things. He's purely like a Hail Mary type of play. Again, the guy that I'm gonna play here is Irwin. I'm not gonna scroll down for him. He's $3,000 and he should get plenty of the snaps on Sunday. Now let's go into tight end. So starting at the top of the list, we have Mark Andrews, who we're gonna fade, going up against Cleveland, best team against tight end. San Francisco at Jacksonville, George Kittle, pass because when Debo and Ayuk are on the field, Kittle gets ignored. Laporta, I support. Laporta in this range is the guy that I would want. He gets a bunch of red zone targets. Goff loves him. This is a really good play. Taysom Hill, been going crazy. He's not stopping. He's not chalky because now, like, you could have had him at like 3,500 2 weeks ago. Went up to 4,000 last week. He's really been doing well. Let's quickly look into him. He's a freaking. You can get a passing touchdown, a rushing touchdown, receiving touchdown. You can do the full trifecta. This is as consistent of tight end production as you're gonna get in 2023. 16, 22, 20. He can do the same thing again. This is what Camaro's really been falling off, and it's not more so like Jamal Williams taking carries. It's this guy taking the goal line carries from him. So you could see that, like, just look at his rushing attempts. 5, 9, 11. Like, it's ramping up. They're like, we need to play this guy. Taysom Hill. I love it. I love seeing him do well. Dalton Schultz is up too. I like him in that range. He's going to be chalky because of last week. But Cincy, I think, has a false ranking at tight end. They're the worst team fantasy points wise, but I don't think it's because they can't cover the tight end. I just think that's because the tight ends are the ones that get open because the QBs are the ones are checking down to this tight ends against the Cincy D. Cincy D just shuts down your receivers and running backs, and basically the tight end comes open. So that's why I like Schultz in this game, but I recognize he'll be chalky. I'm okay with starting Pitts again, just given that Heineke likes to push the ball deep, but not my favorite play. But in that range, those are the two I would consider. In the $3,000 range, I like McBride. He'll get a bunch of targets with Kyler, even without Kyler. So he is the chalkiest play because he is cheap. So keep that in mind. But if you want a leverage play, Chig Okonkwo, $3,000. So that is somebody that you want on your if you're gonna start Levis or whatever. That's somebody that you want to play because he'll get a bunch of the targets, and the Tampa Bay D obviously let Schultz go crazy last week, so definitely consider Chig in your lineup as well. All right. Let's talk about defense really quick. So The chalkiest play on defense is the most expensive play on defense, and that would be the Dallas Cowboys. The Dallas Cowboys are notorious for one thing and one thing only. They love to beat up on bad teams. So this is a spot where the public thinks that Dallas is just going to come in and wipe the floor with the Giants. And I'm here to tell you that could easily happen. But when you have 30 to 40% of the pool, and that's what the projections are stating, going the Cowboys, defenses throwing up 20 plus points, it's really tough, guys. So be careful. I would much rather play a less leveraged defense, a less owned defense, and hope for the best. I'm not saying don't go with an expensive D, but don't go with an expensive D that's chalky, because more likely than not, it's not going to, no matter how good the lineup looks, the matchup looks, it more likely than not, it's not going to hit. So this is two division teams. Giants have been embarrassed. Like, Giants sometimes come, even though Daniel Jones is out, like, they just come out sometimes and fight back. I don't know if that's one of these games, but we'll find out. We'll find out. But going down the list, Seahawks, Ravens, I rather play those two teams, both of them, over the Cowboys. Seahawks are in a really good spot to take advantage of Howell here. Again, Howell's traveling east to west. Hawks got embarrassed. Hawks have a good D. I could see this being like 2 pick sixes, something like that. That's what you need for the Cowboys. And by the way, on the flip side for the Cowboys D, if the Giants get a pick six on Dak, like, that already kills your defense right there. You get slashed. So just be really careful. At 4,400, you're going to need a lot to happen. It's not common for defenses to get 20, but Dallas can certainly do it. Last time Dallas was favored by 17, they played the Texans at last year. And if those of you that have really good recall on games, you'll remember that that game was really close, even though nobody expected it to be. In the middle of the season, Dallas, like, even though they like to beat up on lesser ranked guys, like, this could be a spot where they just kind of let down and play down to their competition. I can see that happening as well, but maybe I'm wrong. Anyways, so again, I like Seahawks and Ravens in this, especially if you're going to go cheap at, like, you're going to get a Trenton Irwin or whatever. Use the extra $1,000 you get from a Trenton Irwin and put it on Seattle D if you want. But if you want to go cheaper, I definitely like San Fran this week against Jacksonville. I think they're going to come out. Chase Young is on that defense too. Maybe he's going to get motivated seeing Nicholas John Bosa, as Richard Sherman would say, on one side. And then they have obviously their D tackles, all pro linebackers. Trevor is in for an ass kicking on Sunday. I also could see Pittsburgh D doing very well too, but if in this range, I really lean 49ers here. If you want to go cheap on this, if we want less than 3,000 and don't want to lose points, kind of like what the Giants did last week, where they're the lowest ranked defense but -1. If we want to do that, I like the Cardinals going up against the Falcons. Even though Taylor Heineke was a recommended stack, there is a plausible scenario where he screws up too, right? So Cardinals at 2,500, that's not a bad price for an Atlanta team that's shaky at quarterback. Arizona coming off an embarrassing loss. I don't hate it. I don't hate it at all. And then Cincinnati. Cincinnati at 2,800. Playing the team which the offense has the second, like, ranked whatever, like, they're the second worst offense to play against if you're the defense or whatever, as you can see with that red ranking. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah, that's not holding against a rookie quarterback going into Cincinnati. So if you're going to play Mixon, you can play the Bengals D2. I love Stroud. I've loved Stroud from day one. He was my number one quarterback coming out. But this is not it. This is not a good spot for him. But I hope if he does bad this week, then when he's available in the main slate competition again next week, less people will be all over him. So that wraps it up for week 10. I want to thank those of you watching for your support. If you like the content, subscribe. If you don't like it, sorry that I couldn't get it to your liking. Come back next week, try to improve that. Every week we try to get a little bit better. Best of luck to your betting ventures, whatever they may be, whether it's DFS, redraft, handicapping, whatever. Hopefully this show provided you one little nugget of information that you didn't know already that helps you get a large winning. If you want to find the site that I work for, I'm an analyst for FFmetrics.com. Visit that. I have a YouTube channel at AndrewDFS. Check that out. And lastly, I'm the co-host of a new podcast, Huddle Up, on Spotify. We drop episodes every Wednesday and Thursday. So check those sites out. Appreciate all your support and best of luck to everybody.